that make Europe a better place to invest. All this is in the proposal of the next MFF, for the next MFF. But what we discussed today is that we must be very lucid about the budgetary equation, as we call it. First of all, from 2028 onwards, the European Union will start repaying Next Generation EU. That's one obligation. Then we need to invest more in our so-called new priorities. This is the European competitiveness, it is AI, it is quantum, defense, security, energy, you know the topics, the new priorities. The third point is that of importance that we want to sustain funding for the European Union's long-standing priorities. This is the common agriculture policy and cohesion. And of course, we want to keep the national contributions in check. If we want all four elements to be respected, then there's only one solution. New own resources are indispensable. We need new own resources. And that was the discussion that we had today. I presented the different elements of the package of the new own resources. Without them, the choice is stark. It's either higher national contributions or it's lower spending capacity. That's the only options that are out there. In other words, lower spending capacities would mean less Europe exactly when more Europe is needed. So this is why the Commission proposed a comprehensive package of new own resources, a package that is diversified, linked to the Union policies, capable of generating stable revenues over time. We think this is the only credible way to match Europe's priorities and Europe's means. And indeed, to conclude, Nikos, we began a discussion, timely and necessary, on the mutual defence clause. The treaty is very clear about the what, and it's very strong that there's an obligation of for other member states to support the one who is in need. The treaty is not clear about what happens when and who does what. And this is the topic we are working on intensively today, together with the, not only today, we have discussed it today, but we are working on that topic together with the High Representative and the Commissioner for Defence. We have a very good example with the Union Civil Protection Mechanism since 20 years in place. Their member states know exactly how to trigger. Everyone knows one's responsibilities and duties. A cascade is triggered, and it is working very effectively. There's a second element that we started to discuss, that is, what is the period before the mutual defence clause? So this period is the grey zone of hybrid attacks, of cyber attacks, of disinformation, of manipulation. And this is a very important period because this has to create the awareness with the member states that something is developing. And at best, it is a time where you can work to prevent an escalation to an armed conflict and to de-escalate. Also, this part of the equation we have been starting to discuss, but there's certainly a long way still to go to complete the picture. Thank you.
Thank you. I will now open the floor for question, and I will start with you.
So let me ask in Greek, please. Κύριε Πρόεδρε, η Κύπρος πρόσφατα βίωσε τη συνέπειες της σύγκρουσης στη Μέση Ανατολή. Ωστόσο, είχε την ευλογία, θα έλεγα, να βιώσει επίσης και την ευρωπαϊκή αλληλεγγύη στην πράξη με τα μέσα και τη βοήθεια που είχε σταλεί από ευρωπαϊκές χώρες. Σε μια περίοδο, μάλιστα, που η χώρα μας προεδρεύει του Συμβουλίου της Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης. Οι εξελίξεις, ωστόσο, έφεραν, όπως είδαμε και στις δηλώσεις, στο προσκήνιο το άρθρο 42.7 της Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης και τη ρήτρα αμοιβαίας συνδρομής. Είχαμε μια σημαντική χθες εξέλιξη όπου καλούνται πλέον τα κράτη-μέλη να θεσμοθετήσουν συγκεκριμένη διαδικασία ενεργοποίηση του συγκεκριμένου άρθρου. Αν μπορείτε να μας πείτε ποια είναι τα επόμενα βήματα, τα επόμενα πρακτικά βήματα και αν πιστεύετε ότι η συζήτηση που έχει ανοίξει σε σχέση με το άρθρο 42.7 θα αποτελέσει και μια παρακαταθήκη της Κυπριακής Προεδρίας.
I will reply also in Greek, if you don't mind, since the question is in Greek. Για την Κυπριακή Δημοκρατία και όχι μόνο, το θέμα είναι ξεκάθαρο. Το άρθρο 42,7 δεν μπορεί να μείνει θεωρητικό. Πρέπει να αποκτήσει ουσία, πρέπει να είναι πλήρως επιχειρησιακό και να είναι αξιόπιστο. Πολλές φορές και για λόγους αποτροπής ενδεχόμενης ανάγκης ενεργοποίησης του άρθρου. Ήδη, όπως ανέφερε πολύ εύστοχα η πρόεδρος της Επιτροπής, γίνεται δουλειά σε επίπεδο της Επιτροπής από την, είπα την εκπρόσωπο, αλλά και από τον αρμόδιο επίτροπο. Εγώ να σας πω ότι σήμερα κράτη-μέλη από όλες τις γεωγραφικές περιοχές που καλύπτει η Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση θα αποταθούμε προς την πρόεδρο της Επιτροπής θέλοντας συγκεκριμένες ιδέες σε σχέση με αυτό που προανέφερα, την ανάγκη να υπάρχουν συγκεκριμένα ένα επιχειρησιακό σχέδιο για το πώς λειτουργεί η Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση. Υπάρχει ένα πολύ καλό προηγούμενο, ο μηχανισμός πολιτικής προστασίας που ανέφερε η πρόεδρος της Επιτροπής, στον οποίο μπορούμε να βασιστούμε για να προχωρήσουμε. Είναι σημαντικό και αν θέλετε είναι ενδεικτικό των εξελίξεων ότι βλέπουμε χώρες, και μου επιτρέπετε να το αναφέρω δημόσια, βλέπουμε χώρες οι οποίες είναι ισχυροί υποστηρικτές του ΝΑΤΟ, είναι στο σκληρό πυρήνα του ΝΑΤΟ, και αναφέρουμε στην Πολωνία, οι οποίες μιλούν για την ανάγκη να προχωρήσουμε δίνοντας ουσία και επιχειρησιακό πλάνο στο άρθρο 42,7. Σκεφτείτε, στην Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση υπάρχουν κάποια κράτη-μέλη που δεν είναι κράτη-μέλη του ΝΑΤΟ και πέραν αυτών των κρατών βλέπουμε και κράτη τα οποία είναι πολύ κοντά στο ΝΑΤΟ, είναι ισχυροί υποστηριχτές του ΝΑΤΟ, όπως η Πολωνία, να υποστηρίζει την ανάγκη η Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση να προχωρήσει δίνοντας επιχειρησιακό σχεδιασμό στο συγκεκριμένο άρθρο. Γιατί δεν μπορούμε να μιλάμε για αυτονομία της Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης αν σε αυτούς τους τομείς δεν έχουμε συγκεκριμένο σχεδιασμό για το πώς θα κινηθούμε. Άρα από δικής μας πλευράς, όπως προανέφερα ήδη με κάποια κράτη-μέλη, είμαστε σε επαφή από όλες τις γεωγραφικές περιοχές που καλύπτει η Ευρωπαϊκή Ένωση. Θα αποταθούμε στην πρόεδρο της Επιτροπής με πολύ συγκεκριμένες ιδέες.
Thank you. Next, Antonio.
Hello, thank you. Antonio Hermosin for the Spanish news agency EFE. Two questions, if I may. First one, several member states have advocated for greater fiscal flexibility regarding investment in the green transition and energy grids. Based on the discussions at this summit, how would you assess the level of support among the member states for such exemptions? And is the Commission open to integrating these proposals into the current fiscal framework? And second, in the context of discussions on strategic autonomy and the mutual defense clause, there are new reports on the U.S. considering punitive measures against allies who decline to support the Middle East campaign, and more specifically regarding potential suspension of Spain's NATO membership. How concerning is this for the EU, and do you think this strengthens the case for accelerating European defence cooperation to reduce dependence on external partners? Thank you.
I start with the fiscal flexibility, you called it, I think. So first of all, yes, it is very important that we invest massively in energy infrastructure. We've spoken a lot about the energy sources, but I have not spoken enough about the fact that we need the grids, the interconnector, we need massive research and development in storing, so batteries, and the so-called flexibility that is artificial intelligence, managing that the energy flows best where it's needed most, and that the energy mix is optimal. This needs lots of investment. We have looked how much the current MFF has provided if you look at Next Generation EU, the cohesion funds and the modernization fund, it's round about 300 billion euros that were available for energy investments. 95 billion of these are not used yet. So I called upon the member states to use these funds. This is very important to do that. Second, we have presented a grids package that works with all the topics that I've just spoken about, also the permitting process, that everything goes faster. We have presented this in December. The initial plan of the co-legislators was to be ready with this package at the end of this year. We have asked whether we can accelerate, and this is something the co-legislators are thinking about, to move this package forward so that we have the final decision on it earlier so that we can implement it, because it helps a lot with the investment in the infrastructure. Now, this is not directly only related to flexibility in the budget. If you're speaking about the general escape clause, this can only be activated in the case of severe economic downturn in the euro area or in the European Union as a whole. Thankfully, this is not the situation we are currently in. But we keep monitoring the developments very closely, and the ECOFIN will be discussing the matter in detail, so we are staying alerted. One element I should also add to that, we have just flexibilized the state aid framework also for these types of investments or support in the situation with energy scarcity and high energy prices too. So a whole mix that you see how to address the topic. And as I said, we keep monitoring the development very closely.
We have our headquarters in the same city than NATO, but we are an independent institution. We cooperate with NATO, but we don't discuss the internal issues of NATO. Then what we are doing, and what the High Representative updated the leaders yesterday, is about the ongoing process to discuss how to operate the mutual assistance clause. The mutual assistance clause is in the treaty, and as the President Christodoulidis explained, of course we need to know how to trigger, how to use this, and we are designing the handbook to how to use this mutual assistance clause. In fact, we have had in practice a first test here in Cyprus, when Cyprus was eaten by Hezbollah, immediately Greece, and then France, Italy, Spain, and Netherlands mobilized military equipment and forces to come to Cyprus to help Cyprus to defend from the external attacks.
Okay. Ansgar.
Thank you. Ansgar Hase, German press agency, DPA. A question to all of you. Yesterday, the German government offered to support an easing of EU sanctions against Iran if there is a comprehensive agreement that includes the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz. So I would like to know what you think of this move. Do you think it's possible to have such an agreement with a regime that have killed tens of thousands of its own people? Thank you.
I start?
Yes. German.
Oh, well, then that's not fair. So, can I have first the Portuguese answer? No, we speak as one. We are both European. And indeed, as you said, Iran keeps attacking its neighbors and repressing its own people. So we believe that sanctions relief should be conditional on verification of de-escalation, particularly on progress on the international effort to contain its nuclear threat, and on a change to the repression of its own people. You described elements of that. And that was the reason why we adopted the sanctions regime in the first place. The behavior of the regime, we should not forget 17,000 young people have been killed in the first month of this year. So the reason for that has to be ended before we can speak about lifting sanctions.
I fully agree. It's too early. We don't have a good experience with Iran. I remember last summer, some days before the snapback of the sanctions, I met with the President Pezeshkian in New York, and we tried at the last minute, until the last minute, to avoid the snapback of the sanctions. But unfortunately, Iran didn't deliver on what they need to deliver to ensure the international community that they don't never ever have a nuclear weapon. And we cannot ignore the nature of the regime, the violence of the regime against their people, and the thousands of people they killed very recently. Then I think it's too early to talk about relieve any kind of sanctions. But of course, we wish that the ceasefire could be last and open the space for diplomacy and from diplomacy to address the core issues. And the core issues are not only the nuclear issue. We need to address also the issue of the ballistic missiles, because this key element for the security in the region and also for Europe. And also they need to end the support of the proxies who are destabilizing the region and threatening also Europe.
So a regional reply. Without commenting on the issue of lifting the sanctions or no, but we cannot reach de-escalation in Iran, in the region, without the active participation of the European Union. And this is also, we want the message from the countries of the region. I'm not commenting on the sanctions, but I will say that as a European Union, we have the tools, we have the means in order to safeguard a permanent de-escalation.
Thank you. I will take one final question. Razia.
Thank you. Razia Akoch, AFP News Agency. Thank you. I have a question about Ukraine. There's been some comments by the German Chancellor who said there was no prospect of Ukraine's immediate accession to the EU, but suggested that Kiev could join meetings of the bloc's members. Everyone agrees that, or at least perhaps privately and most publicly agree, that it's impossible for Ukraine to join the EU immediately. So I kind of wanted to understand what the path forward then would be. You know, what are the alternatives? Could you speak to what that would look like? And how long would it then take for Ukraine to reach full membership? Thank you.
May I? Yes. Okay. Not in German. Look, in the June 2022, we approved by unanimity to give the status of candidate country to Ukraine. And since then, Ukraine is working very hard with the European Commission in order to implement all the reforms they need to implement to ensure the accession to the European Union. All the member states know how difficult is a accession process. I don't know how many years Cyprus spent on this. I know my country spent 9 years negotiating this, the accession. And after this, with a lot of transitional clauses for a long time, then it's always very difficult. And of course, what is very, very, very impressive in all the assessments from the European Commission is to see how, in this such difficult situation, a country in war, suffering a war of aggression, is delivering on their capacity to make reforms. It's not the end of the process. It's a long process, a very hard one, but we cannot try to fix artificial moments to say is in the 3 months or is in 10 years. We need to work very hard and to continue to work very hard to deliver on this, and as soon as possible. And this is the same to Moldova, and this is the same to the 6 Western Balkans countries who are negotiating with us the accession process. And we will continue on this, because for us it's very clear that first, strictly from the economic point of view, it's important to enlarge our single market. The last moment of great growth in Europe was when, in 2004, several member states entered in the Union and enlarged our single market. But now it's also about geopolitical. And when I'm saying that it's about geopolitical, I'm not saying that we can give up on the criterion and the merit-based process, because this is a merit-based process. But what this means is everybody, the candidate countries and the European Union institutions, need to act with the sense of urgency of this process. And, of course, we need to be creative to solve problems. And it is not easy, as you can imagine, to negotiate 9 accession process at the same time, and especially with a country with the dimension and in the current situation of Ukraine. But we believe in the future of Ukraine, and we believe that the future of Ukraine is in the European Union.
I can only echo that, because, it's very important. We have in 2020 renewed the methodology for the accession process. So this is also a set of clear rules among us and the potential candidate countries. And both sides rely on that, so it's a two-way contract if you are a candidate country. It's hard reforms that the candidate countries have to do. We expect them to only move forward if they deliver on these reforms. But the other way around is also true. If they deliver on the reforms, they have a certain right to move forward in the process. In the very end, it is a political decision by all member states, because by unanimity, you have to then decide on accession. But the way forward, the merits-based process forward, has to be respected for both sides to know what to rely on. I want to say explicitly that Ukraine in the last months specifically has worked very, very hard and delivered through the rather important reforms to unlock, for example, European funding, and this has to be rewarded on our side too.
The
Good enough for Zelensky, this?
Sorry?
Is this good enough for Zelensky?
If we discuss this with the President Zelensky, what is good enough?
Ce que vous avez dit, c'est suffisant pour Zelensky, parce qu'il veut plein. He wants full membership.
But of course he is.
But he wants it quickly.
But what we are doing is negotiate all this accession process is towards the full accession of all these member states, these candidate members. That is an ongoing process, and we need to continue to work. Thank you.
Thank you very much for attending this.